"You're the culprit, aren't you?" Amidst suspicious glances from those around me, a colleague accused me. No matter how much I denied it, no one believed me. The only person who took my side was the section manager, Stephen. It wasn't me. Why? As my anxiety grew, Stephen, who I thought was my last ally, ordered me to transfer. This was essentially a demotion. As a child, I wasn't very fond of superhero or squad series. Of course, I admired heroes who would swoop in to save the day and defeat the villains when the heroine was in peril. It's not that I didn't aspire to be like those heroes. But defeating an enemy, even if they were bad, meant hurting someone. I just couldn't bring myself to like that. For that reason, I was known as a kind-hearted boy in my childhood. But that was only when I was little. As I started going to elementary school, people's perception of me gradually changed. I believe there were many reasons, but the main one was probably my appearance. With my heavy, single eyelids and not so great eyesight, I must have always looked like I was glaring at everyone. I didn't intend to, but it seems that's how I appeared to others. In short, my bad gaze made me look like I had a bad character. That made me seem like a bad person. Needless to say, I had no grudges against anyone and never thought of doing anything bad. I was just living a very serious and ordinary life. Yet, against my wishes, misunderstandings about me started to spread. He always looks dissatisfied. He's probably up to no good. Such negative judgments were unwittingly attached to me over time. Initially, I kept saying it was a misunderstanding, but no one believed me. Someone once said that appearances are 90% of a person, and I couldn't agree more. In fact, no one around me really understood who I was. Sure, I could change my clothes or hairstyle, but as a student, there was nothing I could do about my single eyelids. Even my bad gaze had become a habit, and there was nothing I could do about it either. So, by the time I entered middle school, I kept my distance from others to prevent my reputation from worsening. However, now my distancing was perceived as delinquency by others. I was treated as a troublemaker by teachers and targeted by delinquents as an arrogant kid. The number of people who picked fights with me for no reason increased, leaving me with very few pleasant memories of my school life. Even when I didn't understand something in class, I had no friends to explain it to me. I wanted to figure things out on my own, but I wasn't smart enough to find a good way to study, so there was a limit to what I could do. Eventually, the best I could do was to attend a slightly below average high school. My time at high school was just a continuation of the same kind of student life, with nothing particularly changing. In fact, I even got injured because a senior picked a fight with me. Yet, I kept hoping that things would get a bit better once I entered society and somehow managed to graduate from high school. But in the end, even at the company I joined after graduating, no one really appreciated me. I had hoped that becoming a working adult would change something. But the lack of change was shocking, and I couldn't put my heart into my job, leading to my resignation. Still, the reality is that living costs money as long as you're alive. I quickly started working part-time, but even there, I faced nothing but unreasonable treatment. A college student working part-time looked down on me, a high school graduate, saying, "You didn't even go to college, and working part-time is your job. You're such a loser. Do you even understand?" I was also harassed by being persistently made to clean the toilets. There were times when I was laughed at for being scolded due to false reports. The unreasonable treatment wasn't limited to my colleagues. I've had multiple complaints from customers about being glared at or having a bad attitude. There was even a time I was fired from a part-time job because of false accusations made about me on social media. Of course, I wasn't providing RIF customer service. I always thought I was serving customers politely. But even when I changed jobs, the result was the same. I even tried practicing smiling in front of a mirror at home, forcing it. However, having been isolated for so long, it was difficult for me to naturally smile, and it ended up looking more like a creepy, strained smile. My supervisor treated me as if I were a delinquent just there for the part-time job, and my colleagues treated me as an annoyance. In the end, I had no choice but to hop from one part-time job to another, never finding a place where I belonged. After years of this lifestyle, a vague sense of unease began to haunt me. Was it really okay to continue living like this after turning 20? Thinking this, I took a bold step and considered re-entering the workforce full-time. When I graduated from high school, I had once been employed full-time, but it was only through a job placement from school. I wasn't sure how to find a new job. Looking it up online, I found out I could get advice at the employment office. Could someone like me really make it work? Despite my uncertainties, I knew staying in part-time jobs would only continue the ridicule. I mustered the courage and decided to visit the employment office. I wanted a job where I wouldn't have to interact with people much. I was open about wanting any job that allowed me to work quietly on my own, whether it was clerical work or anything else. I honestly shared my thoughts with the person at the counter. Given my appearance, I wondered if they would even take me seriously. But contrary to my worries, that wasn't the case at all. They listened to me normally and recommended a desk job that required computer use. There's a company urgently in need of staff. They said if you can use a computer, you'd be an immediate asset. That's fine. I can handle most tasks. I was confident in my computer skills. I had used them at the company I joined after graduating from high school. Moreover, I had obtained certifications as part of my job requirements, so in a way, it was my area of expertise. Then, I'll contact the person in charge at the company. The interview is. Thanks to the support from the employment office, I was successfully hired as a full-time employee. Starting the job, I immediately noticed the atmosphere was different from my part-time jobs. Harassing me would eventually backfire on them. That's why, in a good way, there was no one who bothered me. However, while there were no bullies, there were also no friends. I was always left out, even during breaks when colleagues chatted happily. I was never invited to join them for drinks after work. The distance from others remained as before, but at least I had a job and received a proper salary. This was much better than hopping between part-time jobs. That's how I quietly resolved to continue working at this company. Perhaps because I worked diligently alone, the section manager, Stephen, surprisingly held me in high regard. In fact, Stephen once said to me, "I thought you were a troublemaker at first, but you work hard and make no mistakes. Keep it up." I was genuinely pleased with Stephen's words. For the first time, I felt recognized and might have been over the moon. Since that day, I stayed late at the office, doing as much work as I could, but this turned out to be a big mistake. A few days later, a colleague, Michael, unusually approached me. "You stayed till the end yesterday, didn't you?" "Yes, but..." "Then you're the culprit." "Excuse me, the culprit?" The company I joined was a leasing firm, and we stored several leased items in our warehouse. It turned out that a laptop stored in the warehouse had gone missing. I was supposed to take it to a client today. "Where did you sell it?" "It wasn't me." "Don't mess with me. You were the last one at the company, so you're the only one who could have taken it." Michael aggressively confronted me. Looking around, no one seemed willing to defend me. Everyone was looking at me with suspicion. What's all this noise? Entering the office while shouting was Stephen. Stephen separated me and Michael, then listened to the story from the other colleagues. "I see, I get the story. However, Brandon wouldn't do such a thing. He's been working diligently, hasn't he? But, Stephen. Wait a minute, Michael. Let's go over there and talk. You guys come with me. Everyone else, gather up for the missing laptops and get started right away. Afterward, Michael and I started explaining in Stephen's office. Michael continued to insist that I was the culprit, but Stephen dismissed it. Finally, Stephen said, "If you are so sure, then provide evidence that Brandon is the culprit," leaving Michael with no choice but to remain silent. Since this incident, the treatment I received from those around me worsened. While I was grateful that Stephen believed in and defended me, it was frustrating that it led to strange rumors that I had somehow manipulated Stephen. Because of this, even colleagues who hadn't paid me much attention before started seeing me as an enemy, and my isolation deepened. Rumors that had no basis in reality, such as he was the leader of a delinquent group or he stole and sold office supplies at his previous job, began to circulate within the company. People started bad-mouthing me loud enough for me to hear, making it even more difficult to work. Calls for my resignation grew louder day by day. Eventually, Stephen was summoned by the upper management and reprimanded. About a week had passed. Then, I was called in by Stephen. "Stephen, you wanted to talk." "Yeah, there's a matter of a transfer for you. I've discussed it with the upper management, and we think you're the right person for the job." A transfer. According to Stephen, the transfer was to a regional branch. They wanted me to work there as an immediate asset. Though it was called a transfer, it was essentially a demotion. The quickest way to resolve this situation is to transfer you, according to the higher-ups. You can refuse if you want. "No, I'll accept." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I know you've been working hard on my behalf these past few days, Stephen. You were the only one who acknowledged me for who I am. That's enough for me. If I refuse, it could worsen your position." I didn't accept the transfer just because it was unreasonable. I didn't want to cause trouble for Stephen, who had recognized my abilities, so I followed the instructions from above, honoring Stephen's efforts. Convincing myself, I accepted the transfer. I thought the transfer would spare me from worrying about strange rumors. I thought it would be a minor change, but reality wasn't so kind. Even though it was a regional branch, it was still the same company. Naturally, the story of my transfer, or rather, my demotion, had spread there too. Everyone looked at me as if I were a thief, and some, believing the odd rumors, refused to approach me. However, Rachel, my new direct supervisor, was different. "Have you gotten used to the work?" "Yes. Well. Then, how about a welcome party today? I invited others, but it seems everyone's busy, so it'll just be the two of us." "No, that's all right." "Excuse me, why? Don't you know the rumors?" "That's just it. They're just rumors, right?" Rachel said this nonchalantly. I arrogantly assumed it would only be at first. I thought she was just interacting with me out of novelty. But Rachel's attitude never changed, no matter how much time passed. She would bring me drinks during breaks and possibly take me to the cafeteria every lunchtime. Moreover, she'd sit next to me and start all sorts of conversations. "You really shouldn't get involved with me." "Why not?" "Because." I started to say it but then clammed up. I realized that she had never changed her attitude from the beginning. Doesn't she care about my appearance? Curious, I decided to ask her directly. "Aren't you scared of me or something?" "Not at all." "Really?" "Jer, not scared at all. Why?" I was taken aback by Rachel's matter-of-fact response. If I were in her shoes, I would never approach someone like me. Especially if it was a woman, there'd be even less reason to approach someone like me. Yet, She talked to me as easily as if I were a friend. Maybe she's trying to show off to others how kind she is by talking to someone like me. Unable to accept her kindness at face value, I ended up suspecting her motives and justifying my negative interpretation. All right, if that's her intention, I'll respond in kind. My gaze is harsh, and with a face like this, everyone says I'm scary. After being avoided by everyone, now I've been demoted. Being nice to someone like me won't get you anything. You know that, right? It was all a misunderstanding, wasn't it? Excuse me. That's why you were demoted, because of a misunderstanding. I know. You're not the kind of person to do such things. Rachel smiled shyly. At the sight of her smile, I unwittingly raised my voice. How can you say that when you've just met me? How do you know I'm not that kind of person? What do you know about me? Rachel flinched for a moment. Everyone's gaze suddenly turned towards me. I realized what I had done, but it was too late to take it back. When I glanced at Rachel, she seemed a bit sad. As I was about to apologize, Rachel, who had brushed her hair back, spoke first. Did you forget about me? Rachel looked me straight in the eye. Taking a closer look at her, she seemed familiar. Soft gestures in her eyes, somewhere. Ah, could it be that Rachel? Correct, hee. It looks like you finally remembered. Rachel. Just hearing her name didn't jog my memory immediately. But I had indeed met her before. Back then, I was a high school student, and she was a student teacher. I'm sorry, I didn't make the connection because I used to call you Ms. Brown. That's a shame. I recognized you right away because you haven't changed at all since then. Miss Nikaido did too. But you didn't recognize me. I'm sorry. There, it's good that you can apologize like a good kid. Hey, don't pat my head, please. I'm 25 now, and we're at work. I hastily brushed off Rachel's hand as she patted my head. Then, she pouted slightly and said in a sulky tone, "But I was happy to see you, my hero." Hero? Yes, you see, you're my hero. Saying so, Rachel began to recount a memory. When I was in high school, Rachel came as a student teacher. Being beautiful, she was popular in the school. Almost all the boys, including me, admired her. But that popularity had a downside. A senior delinquent boy started bothering Rachel. To the delinquent, it might have been just a playful tease. Rachel was terrified as the delinquent forcibly pulled her close to him. I happened to see this and immediately intervened. Of course, I was already a target for the delinquents, so it was also a way to vent their frustrations. But then I heard you were beaten up by those delinquents that night, fractured a bone, and were hospitalized. I felt so guilty. Well, I had had a few run-ins with them before that. Even so, I wanted to thank you, but you were hospitalized and then stopped coming to school, and my student teaching ended. It was just terrible. You remembered all that. I had forgotten. How could I forget? That was my first time. First time. Yes, you were the only man who ever physically protected me like that. So, I believe you're not the kind of person to do wrong. Trust me, and let me handle this. Rachel, unabashed by the surrounding glances, passionately made her case. Looking at her, I felt embarrassed. I felt the need to reflect on many things, but first, I should just humbly ask for her help. Please, help me. I sincerely asked for Rachel's assistance. Several weeks had passed since my transfer to the regional branch. I had become good friends with Rachel, and things were finally settling down. Then one day, as I arrived at work, Rachel came running up to me. Big news, my efforts have paid off. What happened? Remember your former colleague Michael? He's been fired. Fired. It turned out that Michael was the culprit behind the missing leased item. It wasn't that he had taken it from the warehouse. He had simply made a mistake in the order and caused a commotion about it being missing from the warehouse to cover up his mistake. Of course, a single lie wouldn't normally lead to dismissal. However, it was discovered that Michael had made several mistakes in the past and had always blamed his colleagues, just like this time. He had frequently reported falsehoods to cover up his own mistakes. Moreover, it was revealed that several employees who had been blamed by Michael had left the company, and as a result of being held accountable, he was fired. Incidentally, Stephen was involved in the investigation and follow-up of Michael's case. Stephen had felt something was amiss around Michael after he had tried to pin the blame on me and decided to look into it. Rachel's contact also played a role in this. Rachel herself proudly shared this information, so I believe it's accurate. After discussing all this, Rachel finally apologized to me. Sorry, there's something I need to apologize for. No, you don't have to apologize for anything. It's all thanks to you, Rachel. No, it's different. Actually, your transfer, it was my fault. What? When I heard there was trouble and saw your name, I asked Stephen if you could be transferred here under the pretext of needing help. It was me who requested it from Stephen. Really? Since Stephen was my mentor, it was easy to ask him. Then he thought it would be a good way to calm the internal strife, and the decision was made quickly. I'm sorry. Why would you do that? I wanted you to be by my side, so I guess I abused my position a bit. Rachel said with a mischievous smile, like a little devil. I pretended to be exasperated, saying, "What's that all about?" But honestly, I was happy. Later, when Michael himself admitted that his suspicions about me were false, Stephen contacted me to come back. But I firmly refused. Stephen was surprised, but he laughed and accepted it when he saw that I was enjoying my work here. However, when I told Rachel about this, she complained, seemingly dissatisfied. Why, after all the trouble I went through? Well, it's because, when I see someone as cute as you, I just can't bear to leave this place. Cute, who? You. Me. I didn't used to like heroes much, but I was really happy when you called me your hero, Rachel, and heroes should be with their heroines, right? So, you'll stay by my side from now on. Of course, my first love was you. You said you wanted me by your side. Of course, I'd drop everything to be there. Thank you. Rachel, who had always been so bold, blushed a cherry blossom pink. I'm sure my face was just as red, but since we were both looking down, I can't say for sure. After that, Rachel and I started going out, just the two of us. I began to ask her out more, and often invited her on dates on our days off. She still teases me about how much I used to dislike it. But it's been over 10 years since my first love began, so it's only natural for me to be proactive, and I plan to keep telling Rachel that.